Good morning, and welcome to Dualitea. I am your host, Ash, and today we are getting into it's kind of like a new segment, but it's just kind of new flavor, right? With how I'm going about doing Duality. So every Wednesday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be coming on here and engaging with the audience. So I have some question prompts from yesterday, and I have the link in my Instagram bio where you can go and write any questions. If you want to be anonymous, you can do that. Or if you want to just like send me a question or like a prompt, and we can kind of talk about it on here. You could do it anonymously, or you could just write your name in, and and I could talk to you directly on here, and we can kind of do it like that. So I'm grateful. Last night I put it on kind of super last minute, and we got some questions. So we're gonna jump on into that and starting. Shout out to Lori with all the good questions. Everyone had good questions. I want to just put that out there, but I'm just saying that because Lori dropped like quite a few questions in a few different areas, and I really appreciate that. So we're gonna get into it, but also, anybody who's tuned in live right now, you can write in the comments whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram Live. You can write down whatever questions or anything that you have. So, how I'm going to go about it is, I'll share my experience or whatever comes through in these conversations in general. And also, if it feels good, I'll pull some cards on it or whatever the case is. So, before we get into that, I found my old book, my little ripped in half book that I used to bring on this show every day. And my little peace of mind, right? So, it's daily meditations for easing stress. Let's get into what today's energy is. Today is May 4th, right? Yeah? Okay. May 4th. So, May 4th, the pervasive culture misconception is that it is possible. Sorry, they cut the word. The pervasive cultural misconception is that it is possible for a person to have it all: a happy family, a high paying job, a nice home, good vacations, etc., all at the same time. By Dr. Raymond B. Flannery Jr. A woman who recently graduated from college was buying furniture from for her small studio apartment. She asked her father, a successful businessman, "How does it feel, Dad, to have everything you ever wanted? You can buy anything, you can have a beautiful house, lovely furniture, a new car, and you take lots of trips. It'll be years before I have those things. You must feel great." The father was silent for a moment. Then he replied, "Some of the best memories I have are from the days when I lived in a small apartment like yours. I furnished it with orange crates scavenged from the trash. It was pretty, and I was pretty happy back then. I have a lot today, but well, the days of orange crates were fun, too. Wanting it all means not finding contentment with what you do have, and only sets you up for failure. No one ever has it all, so rather than engage in all or nothing thinking, it is more realistic to do what you can with what you have right now. It is better to accept that while you may lack in some areas, you are rich in others." The affirmation for today is, rather than look at what I want, I will appreciate what I already have. Today I recognize that I'm a lot richer than I think I am. And that is today's meditation and peace of mind for me and for you and for all of us, right? So I think that shines a light on a good point, and like in some of the questions that had came up, it's kind of relevant, just being grateful, returning to gratitude. Sometimes we get into like this scarcity mindset where we're like, oh, like I wish I had this. Like if I have this one thing, then I'll just be okay. Or if I get to this one place, if I have this one job, if I'm with this one partner, if I lose weight, if I get more money, like whatever the case is, we tend to miss get all the gifts that are in the present moment when we're not appreciative of it. And it's so easy to slip into that mindset. So I want to invite everybody listening to just think about some of the things that you have and that you're grateful for, and just give yourself a moment to appreciate that and like You don't have to necessarily count them, but just like acknowledge them, acknowledge the fact that, you might have legs that you could walk on, a voice that you could speak with, and, eyes that you can see out of. So, yeah, so taking that moment of gratitude. So important. So, yeah, thank you guys for tuning in with me. And we're going to get into the questions. So, one of the first questions are, how can I introduce new spiritual concept to loved ones in a gentle, not so intimidating way? So it's a tricky question because, everyone's going to react differently. Sometimes if you're super gentle, someone still might feel intimidated by it. Or, if you're, firm in what you believe, that can be intimidating. We can't control who and what are intimidated by us or by the way that we communicate certain things. Sometimes when people are in an insecure place, or if they don't know something about a topic and you do, that's intimidating within itself. So no matter what you speak on about it, it could be triggering for them. So I think just acknowledging when you're expressing something, like, let's say, for example, you're talking about cards, like oracle cards, right? And you're saying like, oh, I tuned in, I got these cards and I love them and they're amazing. And, I really, and they're like, well, what do you use them for? Like, what's the purpose of them, right? And your purpose with it is to communicate with spirit, with creator, with yourself, with your guides, and however you view it in that way. But that kind of terminology might just instantly bring a turn off, to the conversation. Something that might be a good way to go about it and to kind of ground into that conversation is like, oh, well, I use these cards to kind of reaffirm to myself what I already know, right? Because if you boil everything down, that's really what cards are, like, and like tarot cards are as well. They're a little bit different energetically than oracle cards. But if you boil it all down, it's a way to kind of commune with yourself and your spirit and spirits, to kind of remind yourself and or others what is going on about a certain situation or just in general or whatever the case is. So like, even just if you condense that, it's just like, it's my way that I affirm to myself, what I should be focusing on or what I should look out for. You could speak it doesn't have to be super, super mystical. Like, even when you're doing mystical things, you realize that some of the most mystical things that happen actually can't even be relayed in a mystical way. It'll be like, I heard it from the wind. And it's like simple, right? But not super, I didn't have a whole ceremony and this, that, and the third that created this boom outcome. Sometimes one of the boom outcomes, the biggest things that we realize, come from the most simplistic things. So I would say in that case, just grounding down and simplifying. So less is more, especially in that case when you're explaining something to someone, and also just asking them, if they're open to it, and taking note. Like, sometimes we want to share things with people that is for us and they actually don't really care about it, and that's okay. You know what I'm saying? Everybody can't care about everything. But it's up to us to discern, like, maybe this isn't the person I want to have this conversation with, and that's okay. And if they ask me, then I could talk about it, or if you do feel inclined to share, like, definitely honor yourself. But I invite you to tune into that part of you that is wanting to share and where that's coming from, and if you necessarily need to share it in that space with that person. So I hope that answered your question, and thank you for asking it. And moving on to the next question is, how can we balance standing firm in our boundaries without pushing away loved ones? How can I commit to being there and being present for them when needed without crossing my own boundaries? Boundaries is such a beautiful concept, the fact that we have the awareness enough to even start to discern and apply them, Not everyone gets that in these lifetimes. And I feel like more and more we're centering boundaries. And when we start to, I know for myself, like when I've started my journey of like learning boundaries, right? It kind of came off really intense in the beginning. It was like I noticed I didn't like something and it wasn't okay with it anymore. So then I was like, no access. That's it, And then I had to learn like going back and forth and finding the balance of like being gentle with my boundaries, but still being firm with them. That looks and feels different for everybody. In every scenario is going to be different. I think that the most important thing is to not abandon yourself. And that is how to uphold your boundary. Like, no matter what goes on, to not abandon yourself. So just finding ways that you can still stay with yourself and with whatever feeling is coming up for you, navigating with whoever it is. Sometimes we have to set those boundaries with ourselves. Like, oh, okay, I really, really, really want this, like, cheese Danish, right? But you're trying to not intake that much sugar, or let's say in more drastic sense, say you're diabetic, right? And that that's going to spike your sugar. So you're like, all right, well, I have to have a boundary. And that boundary is also discipline. And those are kind of interchangeable in this particular example that I'm giving. But that boundary with yourself is like, like, I know that you want this and I love you. I understand that this is something you want. I want to give you something that's going to benefit you even better, and benefit our exchange, like you with yourself, you with your body. So I'm going to have a banana instead. I'm going to have, a bowl of oatmeal, and maybe I'll put some raisins in it. Maybe I'll put a little bit of maple syrup in it, and like sweeten it up. So you still give yourself that sweetness, but you do it in a way that's most healthy for that exchange. So now when applied to other people, it's like, say you tell somebody that they need to knock on the door before they come in, right? And you've told them, then you've set this boundary, and they're flying in, and they're not respecting this boundary. And like naturally, the first initial reaction you want to give is like anger, right? Rightfully so, because what you're like, like, you're not respecting me. Like, I told you something. I told you what I'm okay with and what I'm not okay with, and you're disregarding it, right? That's the internal feeling where that's very loud and that we naturally react to most of the time. It's okay to feel that emotion, if you want to, like, kind of ground yourself where you're not having that high intensity emotion lead. And that could look like yelling, responding, being like, what is wrong with you? I told you, listen to me when I speak. It's also like there's something inside of ourselves like that, not feeling heard, not feeling seen, not feeling respected. Affirming to yourself in those moments. And I know it's so much easier said than done, but in those moments, like even just like holding your belly and being like, I respect myself, I'm safe, like it's okay, and then taking a breath and then speaking, right? Because when we speak, hey Dalia, and when we speak and we're like in this reactionary mode, then that's when we tend to harm people, right? Because we're hurt, so we hurt, right? There's just hurt people. It's just what a natural reaction of life, We're not perfect. When we're discerning through life and finding balance, like it's going to look like we're going to give boundaries and yell about them or cross our own boundaries. And there's like this dance. And I think the most important thing is to not feel shame within that experience. Not to not feel shame. That's kind of like impossible. But to understand that you don't need to hold on to the shame, right? Because that's what just continues that behavior to go on, right? So I want to go back to the question just to make sure that I answered it. How can we balance standing firm in our boundaries without pushing our loved ones away? I think also expressing why we're creating the boundary. Like, hey, when you knock on the door, it lets me know that you're coming in. So it has me set up to be ready for you to come in. Invite them into a part of your boundary. Why they know that they're also a part of your boundary in a good way, because that's going to benefit the both of us. If I know that you're coming into the room, then I can prepare to have a conversation with you and give you my undivided attention, right? As opposed to if you run in the room and I'm in the middle of tweezing my eyebrows and I stab myself in the eye and I turn around and I yell, now I can't even hear what you came into the room to do or ask me because I'm already so upset that you even just bursted in the room. So I think an important thing about setting boundaries is also when you're in a grounded enough space to communicate, like, if it feels good for you, because you don't always have to communicate your boundaries with everybody or why they exist. But with some people, especially like our family, it's important to be like, hey, like, I love you. I love myself. This is what works for me. You know, I want to know what works for you as well. And like, what are some boundaries you have? You know, even inviting them into the conversation to have them explore that, because that might not be something that they're super familiar with or something that they're really comfortable with. So if you create that safe space, now look at you both creating boundaries. That's incredible, you know? So definitely like taking that chance to ground down and experience that with each other. How can I commit to being there, being present for them, needing without crossing my own boundaries? Yeah, just circling back to that, just not abandoning yourself, you know, and allowing, even if you need a moment, just being like, I need a moment. I need a moment. I need to step out. I need a moment. And then, you know, doing what it is that you need to do, whether it's 5 jumping jacks, whether it's taking 4 breaths, whether it's splashing water on your face. If you feel you can't have that conversation, you can't be present in it because you're in a space where you're hurt, you know, you're reacting to somebody not respecting something that you said, it's completely normal. You know what I mean? It's very human. And you shouldn't beat yourself up for having those emotions. Rather, just learning different little things. Like, you can make it fun, make it playful. Like, okay, like, I know I just need to splash some water on my face, or I need to go have a cup of tea, or like, I need whatever the case is. Because sometimes we don't have the moments to like go take a walk, right? So maybe you just bust out and start dancing. Maybe you just bust out and like start doing jumping jacks. Like, whatever it is, to just put movement into the feeling, so that you're not internalizing it and pushing it down, I think is really important. So I hope that answered your question. Moving on to the next question. The balance between patience and faith versus persistence and logic for goals. That's a big one. That's something that like I find myself constantly contemplating on. You know, I think that when we're looking at goals, you know, we're like, all right, well, I got to put in the work, like hustle mentality, right? I got to go get it. I got to like work at it every single day. And like, yes, it's important to put energy into it. But it's like, now let's discern how much energy. If you're running on 40% energy that day, maybe you give it 2% energy. But if you give it 10% energy, now you're taking a fourth of your energy and you're down 30. Also, while you're at that 40% energy, doing something that's going to help restore you, right? Like maybe taking a nap, maybe taking a walk, maybe going into nature, you know, whatever that can look like for you. Because some days we have like, we're on 10, like, or we're on like 100 rather, and we're just on it, you know? And we could put all this energy, whether it's into our art, our creative expression, our, you know, our podcast, our, you know, teeth whitening business, whatever it is that we do. We can put all that energy into it that day because we feel super good. And then there's days that we don't feel good at all. And first and foremost, we got to take care of ourselves in those days and like how we're feeling and what that looks like. And then maybe thinking about something or looking at it in a different way is just the same amount of amount of energy that you need. Maybe you're working on a painting and you're going hard. One day you're like working on for 10 hours and then the next day you're not really feeling so good. So maybe you don't even pick up a brush, but you just look at it and you just reflect on it, but you not hyper criticize it, right? Just kind of reflect on it. And just kind of look at it, flip it upside down, look at it in a new way. And that could apply to everybody, not just artists. So that could apply to anybody who has any kind of anything that they're doing. You know, whether you're working for someone or you're working for yourself, take an opportunity to contemplate and like lay down and be like, maybe if I flipped it, how would I feel if I didn't have this in my life? How would I feel if I had more of this in my life, right? So now when we have that kind of space, where we're looking at how we're managing the energy we're putting into it. On the logical place. I mean, logical and kind of faith-based, metaphysical, all kind of coincides, whether we like realize it or not, you know, in a big way. But I think like the logic is definitely, well, it depends on, really, I was going to say is centered more, but you know, it depends, because if you're in a super spiritual community, the manifestation could be super centered, right? So, you know, there's certain things that you just got to let go and let God take care of, or creator, whatever you believe in the universe, kind of take care of. Maybe that's something that you've been working consistently hard at for so long, and like you feel like, all right, this doesn't seem like it's working. I'm just going to give it to God. If it's supposed to come back to me, it will. If it not, it doesn't, you know. I think that using our own discernment to kind of balance that is really key, because it's going to look different for everybody. Like, I don't know if you are going to the gym every single day and like fiending for those results and not getting them. And the reason why you're not getting them might be because there's an underlying condition or issue that needs to be addressed first, right? So then if you, in that case, kind of gave it to God, where you're like, all right, I'm not going to go 7 days a week. I'm going to go 3 days a week realistically, and kind of make it more grounded expectation. It's kind of like, when I think about it, it's kind of like when we have relationships and we have the honeymoon phase. When we're doing any kind of anything new, right? We have the honeymoon phase where we're like super hyper fixated and we're like, I need to do this every single day, da 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 da. And it's unrealistic, because every single day we can't do everything. You know, every single day, you never know what's going to come into your day. You might have a day where you have to go do a whole bunch of things for other people, and then, or you have to do a whole bunch of things for yourself in your house that has nothing to do with the actual, you know, expression in which we're talking about, the new thing. So at first it could be like, wow, I used to do this so much more. I feel like I even think about that too with my podcast. Like, oh, I used to center this so much more in my life, you know, and then like life happened and the honeymoon phase dissipated. And then I had to choose, like, okay, do I still want to do this? Do I still want to put a certain amount of energy? How much energy do I feel comfortable putting into this? That reflection period, the contemplation period, the discernment period. I think that is the most important when it comes to like finding the balance between like the patience, the faith, you know, the persistence and the logic. It's like, we can only know that. Like, if we feel like, okay, I put in this, now I just need to wait. But not just sitting over, like, you know, hunched over waiting for like this seed to grow out the dirt, but just kind of moving on, doing some other things. You know that the seed's there. You go, you water it sometimes, but you're not digging it up and seeing if it germinated. You wait, you see it popping out the ground. You're like, that's great. That's beautiful. I love that, right? But you're still not going to sit there and stare at it until it becomes a tree and starts bearing fruit, or becomes a whatever plant it is. You know, it starts becoming the more mature version of that. You're going to continue to do your life. Yes, you might water your plant once a week, twice a week, every day, depending on the plant. You know, some plants, you might have a cactus. You might need to water it once a month. And that changes with each different thing that we focus on and that we're working on is going to need a different amount of TLC, a different amount of watering, whether that's our relationships, whether that's our business, whether that is our family life, our housing life, whatever it is, our cleaning life, whatever it is, it's going to need, you might need to clean every day. You might need to talk to your family every day. You might need to talk to your family once a week. You might need to talk to your family once a month. Everybody has a different experience. You might need to work every day. You might need to work a few days a week. You know, you might need to work on your creative endeavors every day. You might not. You know, everything is going to ebb and flow. There's going to be times where you're working every day. There's going to be times that you're doing your creative stuff every day and you're not working. Like, there's just, life just changes. And every time life changes, it's about like, you know, what I believe it's about is just like surrendering to those changes. And, you know, it's a lot easier said than done. It's another thing, a lot easier said than done. But it's so beautiful and magical once we get the hang of kind of feeling that resistance come up and being like, ooh, I don't know if I want to change this or do this. And then being like, okay, all right, I accept that. I'll do that. Or I won't do that. I'll just let it sit. And leave it in its place. And then you, once again, if it's meant for you, it will continue to show up in your orbit. It will, and I'm not just talking about on your phone, because they be listening to us, so that shit is different. But like, it'll show up in your orbit, like, you go outside somewhere and you see an art gallery. If you've been thinking about opening up an art gallery, you'll see a, like, even as simple as this. Like, I used to work at Starbucks. When I ended up working at Starbucks and I was applying for different jobs at the time during the pandemic, like, I was like, I just kept on seeing Starbucks. Like, I just kept, and I don't really drink Starbucks like that. Like, I never was a huge, I don't really drink coffee. I'm a tea person, and like, it just kept showing up. And I truly believe that I was meant to work at that store. I was meant to work at that store and meet the people that I meet and get the experiences that I got. And it was, the universe was not shutting up about it. So it's like, the universe is always very loud. It's just, do we have it on mute, or do we have it on low volume? Just, I advise you to check that, check like you would check your phone. Like, you click a video and you don't hear a sound and you're quick to be like, oh, is this on mute? Is it loud? But it's like, when we're looking for signs, we just assume that they're not there. Even when they're there, it's just like, okay, well, maybe let me check my settings. It's not the universe's settings. It's my settings. Like, how open am I to receive the truth in what I'm supposed to be doing right now? We're not always so open to receive the truth in what we're supposed to do. We just want to do what we want to do. And if it's not what we want to do, we don't see it. If that's not what's suiting me right now in this moment, I'm like, I didn't see that sign. What are you talking about? That sign. The same thing happens with the cards, and that's why I don't really pull for myself anymore. And one of many reasons. And, but the same thing goes for if I'm pulling for a client, if I'm pulling for someone in general. It's like, the card will literally be like, release this. And it's up to us to be like, oh, nah, that means release my sugar, my sweet tooth. That's what that means. Not this bad job or this thing, because that job or that relationship or whatever it is, or that I guess more not so good coping mechanism is bringing you some sort of safety and some sort of stability in whatever system your mind has built throughout your entire life, and maybe even previous lives. It creates a system for it to feel safe. And sometimes we feel safe in not so safe situations. And then when the cards or the signs around us or whatever says like, maybe not this. And we know, we're like, yeah, I know, I've been in denial about this, blah, blah, blah. But what we say is like, yeah, maybe it means something else. Maybe it's referring to a different part, because we're not ready to let go, and that's okay. You let go when you need to let go. Sometimes the universe might drag you a little bit. Sometimes we need to be dragged. Other times we can just kind of let go and kind of just walk and be graceful about it. Other times we hold on and we dig our nails in, and it could kind of look like another experience, but who's to say what's good, what's right or wrong, what's better or worse? It's like, it's your experience. It doesn't have to be a judgment around that. So I hope that I answered your question, Danny. And yeah, if you have anything else, and Lori too, if you guys have anything else that you want to, talk about those questions, feel free to put it in the comments, and Kenny will pull it up, or I'll say it over here. So yeah, I'm going to take a sip of tea real quick. We're drinking kava kava today. And Yogi T said, know that you're a child of the universe. Always a child of the universe. Even when we're adults. Important to remember. So yeah, moving on to, oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for tuning in, for being here. I'm happy that you got to hear when your question came up. So yeah, so going on to the next question, Angela asked the abortion controversy. So I feel like I'm not fully educated up on all of the controversy right now. I don't watch the news. I come across things sometimes, but I don't know like where we're at to the point, but I can speak on what I know from the articles and things that I've seen. So I'm not sure exactly where to start with this, but we'll just jump on in. So from the perspective of what I know and what I've seen, it's just like different states kind of creating these laws that banning abortion and, you know, creating this no option, right, for women and their own bodies to, you know, kind of terminate their pregnancies and things of that. And like, I guess like in the most balanced and like gentle way or like grounded place that I can speak on it is just, I believe that there's different ways that we can go about it. I certainly don't believe that people should be making laws about it, you know, maybe like regulations and restrictions on like how many or how frequently or how it's used. You know, I don't believe in abortions being used as birth control. I definitely don't think that that's something that I'm not morally okay with that, but I am very much so understanding of why people do get abortions, and there's so many different situations and cases and why people get abortions. Most of all, I believe that it should be a choice. Like there shouldn't be any kind of law that's like you're not allowed to do. You'll go to jail if you do this. Like a person could be saving a child's life by not conceiving it, you know, in a big way, because like what are they going to be birthed in? What if that person has literally nothing, you know, and then that child is completely brought through nothing, right? And like, well, not nothing, but you know what I'm saying, in that way of like not having any source of stability. What if that isn't, you know, in that way? But you know, so I think it's a little bit of a controversial topic. I think that every person's opinion is very important to be grounded before talking about controversial topics like this, because I really do understand the concept also of, you know, well, then the baby doesn't have a choice and this, that, and the third. But my belief system, I can only really speak on myself. So I'm going to speak on myself. I'm not going to speak on other people. My belief system is that the soul of the child kind of hangs out with the mom until the moment of birth, right? I've come to this conclusion and this theory, or what I feel to be very real, through many different experiences. Also, if you've ever been in the room with someone who's given birth, I can't speak on a person who's given birth because I've not given birth, so I cannot speak on that. But I've been in the room 2 times with women who have given birth. I've had the privilege to be there. And I almost passed out both times that when the baby was coming out. And not because like the looks and everything that was happening, like physically, it was energetically. It felt like the only thing I could explain it or equate it to, it felt like when I had drank ayahuasca in the past and the medicine started to kick in. Like that's what it felt like, so intensely. And I truly believe in my being that that is when the actual soul, like the spirit, enters the child as the vehicle, right? Now, to coincide with science, do I believe, like, you know, all of the different things? How can the baby be affected in the womb, emotionally, scientifically? I think that, you know, the body still gets affected by certain things, toxins, things that we eat, of course. Like, I think that all plays a part in the body. And I think that the spirit enters, though, like, on the point of arrival into the earth, like, whether out of the vagina or through C-section. Once the baby hits the air, is like, and out is out, that's when I think that the soul connects. So with that being said, I believe that in these different ways that, you know, abortion's like just looked at as so many different things, and it doesn't have to be like, there's so many experiences in the, I think that people should be more educated who are distributing the different forms of termination, right? And I think that it could be done in a much more educational way rather than like, I'm going to get a tooth removed and it's why does that feel the same? Like, why does that feel the same? Like, I've had experiences with people that have went and like see and have gotten the system where, you know, they had the treatment and it was very like, okay, I went in, I went out. There's no aftercare. there's no emotional treatment about it, you know, and then there's also men that are making and creating these laws, majority, right? That it's like not even an experience that they have. So it's just so like, what? Why? How is that even something that can happen? You know, it's like bunch of women came together and are like, oh, all men need to have vasectomies, you know, or like, it's like, how can we tell, like, it's not our bodies, like, we don't have, you know, why can we make a law? Like, how can we make a law in that way? And, you know, maybe I'll get, you know, backlash for comparing those two, but it's just like, you know, just like semen can create children, you know, and the uterus, the womb can create child, like both of them are doing that thing, even though the baby stays with the mom. So it's like, I believe I have a lot to say about this topic, actually, and I'm not going to take up this entire podcast with it, but I will say that I truly believe that if people went about creating the termination in a way that had them connect with themselves, their emotions, why they can't have this child, why they're feeling the ways that they're feeling, if there is any resources, you know, and like people will argue like, oh, you can just like give up to adoption, but like that can do a lot more emotional damage to a person as well. You know, it's like some people don't understand that if a person doesn't have an abortion, it could be losing a person for a person, right? Like that could really bring someone to a really horrible mental state where they might they might cease to exist anymore. You know, they could unlive themselves in a way. And like, so it's like there's a lot of lines of morality and a lot of people speaking on consent of like, well, there's the consent of this and the consent of that. If you're arguing the consent of the baby, then but you're not arguing the consent of the woman, like, you know. And then there's the whole topic, the heavy topic of, you know, what if that baby was conceived unconsensually, you know, and what do we do then? And then is that woman still going to go to jail? Like there's this shit going on in Texas that it's like somebody's driving Uber. If they drive the Uber to a person who's getting an abortion, like they could go to jail too. Like that's absurd. You know what I'm saying? There's so many things in the world. There's so many, instead of putting the focus on making women look like the villains in this, why are we not looking at how babies are being conceived? The same thing goes for birth control. You know, why are we looking at it only as women stopping, you know, using birth control to stop women from creating pregnancy? Meanwhile, like women can only get pregnant once a year, right? Women can only get pregnant once a year. Or like very, very rare that they can get pregnant sooner than that. But men can impregnate a woman, like multiple, you can have 365 kids, you know, if you're super fertile, you know, and you're blowing it off on everyone's ovulation. Like, why are we looking at only women to stop this problem? Like, I'm just trying to understand that, you know. So it's a controversial thing, right? You know, and I'm not gonna center this whole podcast, like I said, on it, but I hope that answers your question. You know, it wasn't really a question; it was kind of a statement. You know, we talked about it. We're here. That was kind of the different kind of question from what we were talking about with the other stuff. But I'm happy that it was spoken on, because I think that it's something that, you know, more people should center in a way that it's like, it doesn't have to be so aggressive on one way or the other. Can we just have compassion? Can we have compassion for people having choices and decisions with their own bodies in many different ways? Doesn't have to be solely to this topic, you know, it could be with many other topics. Can we be sovereign beings and make decisions for ourselves? And for those people that are doing excessive amounts of terminations and things like that, can we have compassion for them, and can we maybe get them some counseling, or, you know, give them a safe space where they can kind of unpack why they're so okay with doing that, you know, rather than villainizing them and like, clearly they're hurt, clearly they're disconnected from themselves. If you're connected to yourself and your spirit, morally you would never want to do that, you know. So it's like, rather than being like, you're horrible, women are horrible, they can't do this, it's like, let's treat things at the root, right? Let's find what's under the surface. Yeah, that person might seem monstrous in the moment and maybe they don't seem like they have compassion, but Maybe they don't have the ability to because they're not connected to it. Putting an A on that person's chest or whatever however you look, just banning one person or one situation is not going to solve the problem. The problem is much deeper than that. And finding other ways that we can kind of commune, and that it boils down to a lot of things. The disconnection between like the understanding of the sacredness of having sex, the understanding of the sacredness of conceiving child, what it actually, is meant to do, and like why we're meant to do it. Like that's so lost in the sense of history. Like everybody's just out here like fucking, you know what I mean? And like, sorry to say it like that, but that's how it is. And it's like, and people have forgotten how sacred certain things are. So before we start throwing laws, before we start banning things, like let's implement actual sex ed that can teach kids, that can teach teenagers rather, how do you get pregnant? People still don't know that you can only get pregnant when you're ovulating. People still don't know what menstruation is. Maybe let's look at that, right? Okay, so I'm going to end it there. Now, thank you for that, and thank you for being with me throughout that. And so going on to the next question. Now I have one more thing. I do have one more thing. Something that I think that is really important for anybody who is listening to this now, who will listen to it in the future, and whatever the case is. I think that it's very important for humans with wombs to connect with their wombs. And that's going to look and feel different for everybody, but it's also going to look and feel the same for a lot. And to know that you literally have a portal, the universe has gifted you the ability to have a portal between worlds. Like, we can't even, like, the idea, the concept of creating a child is so fucking wild. It blows my mind every time I think about it. And just understanding that and teaching our youth about that, not only the women, but teaching the boys about it too. Teaching, how important it is and how that is a treasure, and we need to learn how to navigate how we create laws about them. Like, it's like we can't govern, and that goes to so many different things. We can't govern people's bodies and tell them what they can and cannot put into them or take out of them. Like, and that's really the question of morality too. It's just like, where there's so many layers of that. So I, if that triggered you in any way, I invite you to sit with that in a good way. Like, not like sit with that and reflect, like, because you're wrong. Like, no, you might be right. You might know better than me. You might have more things to say. Hit me up. Let's talk about it. Like, I'm super open to that. And I just have compassion for everybody that's experiencing that in those states, especially, finding other routes and, go to the natural people, go to the holistic ways. There are other ways, and there are other people that can support you and help you at these times. So any person that is coming from that space, like, just pray about it. I truly believe to just pray about it. And I'll leave that there. So next question. The planetary placements on birth charts besides mainstream stuff. Okay, so we're talking about astrology now. We've turned the corner to astrology. Now, I'm no astrologist. I know a little something, but I don't know a lot of something. So I'll just speak on what I know. We all know our sun signs, right? If you're like, oh, I'm a Leo, I'm a Gemini, I'm a Scorpio, that's your sun sign. So our sun signs are like kind of like our core belief systems, right? It's our identity. It's who we are, right? Or who we perceive ourselves to be in that way. Now, we have a thing called a natal chart. When you find out what time you were born, the location you were born, and your birth date, you can type that in and it'll get a pie. So the circular pie will kind of be a screenshot of, it will be a screenshot of where the stars and the planets were when you were born. So it's pretty cool. So you get this pie as a bunch of symbols, and you look at it and you're like, what the fuck does this mean? But then you have somebody who might know a little bit more, and then they can tell you, right? Or you can look down, you know, usually in whether it's apps like CoStar, or if you're on Astro Theme, you click this display like aspects and placements and things of that sort, and it'll show you where you can look, and it'll say sun in Gemini, 30 degrees, you know, or and then moon in Scorpio. So what does that mean? Where is like moon? Like, let's just go to moon and rising. So our moon, opposite of our sun, is our emotional, the way we process things, the way we emotionally process things, the way we could mentally process things, so what we our subconscious in a way, you know, that kind of gets more into like the 8th house and like, you know, other Neptune and Pluto placements, but we're just gonna center the moon and rising right now. So the moon is all about like our feels, right? It's our feels. You got the moon that's feminine, you got the sun that is masculine. So our sun is like, this is how we are in the physical 3-dimensional world. The moon is like, this is how we are inside of our head, in our heart, inside of us, right? This is how we feel, like this is what we think, you know. I'll use myself for example. I'm a Libra moon, right? Libra moons, I'm a Cancer sun, and I'm a Libra moon. So being a Cancer is like, okay, I have, you know, everyone's like, oh, you know, you're so emotional, you're so sensitive. Like, I am. Like, that is a fact. But that doesn't mean that I'm walking around crying all the time. That could mean that I'd be angry all the time. I mean, you're super happy all the time. Emotions aren't just sadness, right? So let's clear that up for all the Cancers. And yes, I'm super sensitive, you know, like sensitive. I'm sensitive in every way. Like, if I don't do a certain thing, then I might have a reaction. You know, if I don't have certain supplements, I might be sensitive to something. Like, if I, you know, don't like a smell or something, I might gag. Like, I'm sensitive in that way. And then I'm also sensitive in the way that if I sit down and meditate, or if I do certain things, like I will have like very vivid dreams, you know, and like I'll wake up from them like, oh shit, like I don't even feel like I slept, you know? So there's the pros and the cons to sensitivity, right? So there's that. So I just want to clear that up for the Cancers. Listen, and also the Cancer placements, right? Because if you are a Cancer moon or a rising or any other placement, really, like you still having that aspect of understanding what Cancer is, because I feel like it's a lot of muddied stuff. Just like there's the misconceptions of Geminis, there's misconceptions of Leos and Scorpios. But then there's also like the stereotypes that really do fit the bill, you know, like being sensitive is one of them. So moving on to what a moon sign is. So I'm a Libra moon. So what does that mean? I process emotions like a Libra. So in my head, I'm always like, is this fair? Is this just? Is this balanced? You know, hence the podcast hence everything I talk about is like finding balance. So is this balanced? Is always how I'm processing things. Is this fair to me? Is this fair to other people? You know, and then also the flip side, well, not flip side, but just other aspect of Libra is romanticizing. Something that I've experienced as a Libra moon is that I have romanticized everything and everyone on max volume for majority of my life. And before I started understanding, right, about how my astrological chart played out and how my Libra moon is a big aspect of that. So in other words, when I say my Libra moon, and if I wanted to ground it and take it out of astrology terms, I could be like, and how I process my emotions is a lot of times I think I'm feeling them, right? That Cancer side, oh, I feel everything. But I'm analyzing them. Like I'm analyzing them mentally, because Libra's still an air sign. So sun, moon, we have rising. Now rising is how we are perceived and how we perceive the world. So it's like the lens. You know, if you are a Leo rising, you might be looked at like you like attention, and you might look at the world like and see other people who actually want attention, and you might not want attention in the way that people perceive you as, or people might look at you as super cocky or confident or this and that, and like you might not really feel that way, you know, but that's how you're perceived. The same thing could go opposite spectrum. Like now, say you're a Scorpio rising, you know, Scorpio rising could look like super introspective, like, you know, very to themselves, maybe look a little mean. I mean, I say that with love, but I feel like Scorpio risings can have like an intimidating, like the way Leo risings can have this like intimidating essence to them. Scorpio risings have this intimidating aspect because it's coming from these two different sides. Like Leo is like, I'm the center of the universe, and Scorpio's like, I'm the depths of Pluto. That is the furthest planet away from everyone. I'm mysterious. No one really understands me. And guess what? You don't get to understand me because I'm also secretive too. So like, depending on where our placements are, and they activate with the rest of our chart in like such a unique way. And astrology is just like another form of learning the blueprints of ourselves and understanding ourselves, right? You know, we have the Myers-Briggs test, we have the Enneagram, we have numerology, we have therapy, right? We have different like psychotherapy. We have all these different ways, these systematic ways that we can learn about ourselves. I think they're all important. I indulge in all of them personally. Like I think they're great. I think what's cool about astrology is like the more that you learn about it. I know from my own personal experience, I remember looking at my chart and being like, that's not me. I don't know about that. I'm outgoing here. I'm shy here. I'm like this. I'm like that. I don't know. I like, once I do one thing, I want to do it consistently, or I'm very particular with that. I don't know about that. Or no. That sounds like me. But that part don't sound like me. A lot of times, now that I reflect back, a lot of the things that I was resistant to, especially when I first got into astrology, they were accurate, but I just didn't see it yet, you know. And I'm not saying that it's a foolproof method, because then we could flip it and be like, all right, well, you know, sidereal is the real astrology. Like the 13th sign with Ophiuchus is the real astrology. The Vedic is the real astrology. Listen, whatever resonates with you. At different times, different things have resonated with me. Whatever resonates with you. If you're just starting into it, you don't have to get too hectic with all of it. The one that everybody knows is tropical. That's what you're going to see most of. And just be playful with it. You know, it doesn't have to be like, oh, okay, I'm looking at this chart at the doctor and I'm analyzing everything and it has to be super right or else I'm going to freaking die. Like, it doesn't have to be that extreme. You just be like, oh, if you don't like it, be like, oh, that's a nice opinion. I'll consider it. Maybe it has some truth in it, maybe it doesn't, you know. And I'm not saying that everything does, because I definitely, there's certain things that I'm like, it still doesn't resonate, but maybe in 10 years it will. Who am I to say, you know? So astrology and planetary placements like that are outside of just like the scope of, all right, this is my sign, are super fun. You know, we get to learn, like, so our moon, our sun is like, you know, like I said, the 3-dimensional part of ourself, right? Like our identity, right? Then we have our moon, which is the way we are processing emotions and the way we think about things or towards things, and our like views on things. And then views on things will be more so of our ascendant. So our ascendant is like how we view the world, how the world views us, right? Then we have our Venus. Our Venus is the planet of love. Like our Venus is the planet of attraction. So Venus is how we love, but also how we want to be loved, right? So yeah, like that's kind of like what we attract or what we're pulling. And then our Mars is what we give and like how we go towards action. So Mars is like very action oriented, could be like the angry part of ourselves, could be like the super like, all right, get shit done energy. Like Mars is very like get shit done energy. If you're familiar with the tarot, Mars is very like the Emperor, you know, very like let's go, like let's get this, this is what I need, this is what I want. Yeah, and our Mercury is how we communicate. I'm not going to get into the outer planets. We're just going to stop there at the 5. But yeah, or the 6. And it's the way our Mercury is how we communicate. They say that if you have the same Mercury sign as your sun sign, that you say exactly what you mean. Like you say it exactly what you mean. And it's not that other people with other placements don't have that ability. It's just like innate with people. Like if you're a Virgo and you have a Virgo Mercury, you're going to say exactly what you're thinking, like how you feel about it in that way with what you say, no matter how it comes out. Then there's like other signs. Like I could use Gemini Mercury, for example, out of personal experience, that I feel like my brain sometimes can't catch up to my mouth, but then I also feel like my mouth is way further than my brain. Like at times I'm like still talking and I've already like lost the thought of what the core was. So like I could say I do mean what I say when I'm in the most grounded place, right? And I do mean what I say. And then other times it can kind of get mixy because I'm an audio processor. So a lot of times it's good for me to just kind of like take a voice recording or just say certain things or just kind of talk to myself, or like somebody who maybe communicates like me, like shout out to Lori, and like that we're kind of bouncing things off of each other and we're both very communicative people. But not everybody is super communicative, right? Other people like to process things through, painting a picture or reading a book or sitting in silence. A lot of times I like to process things with verbally speaking them, and I find that when I have conversations with people that do the same, we kind of like ping pong bounce until we get to like exactly where it's like this explosion of like, this is everything that we were trying to say in one word. And that's so cool. Like, that's so much fun, So Mercury placements are pretty cool too. You get to kind of, if you're a fan of communication, it's definitely the one that you want to center. But it's cool because we get to learn about ourselves. Then we also get to learn about our partners. We get to learn about, people that we would do business or work with. We get to find out about our friends and, ultimately like what we like, what we don't like, what we're okay with, what we're not okay with. It's like why we like certain people we like and where that comes from within us, because that's also like the inside, the out. It's all within. I truly believe like even in astrology, like when we have a lot more of say like one sign, I believe like there's a lesson that should be there. Like that's coming up, for us to learn. Like if you have a bunch of, water placements, like you're really supposed to feel things in certain ways in this lifetime. If you have a bunch of fire placements, you're supposed to do a lot of things, or ignite a lot of things. Air placements to have critical thinking and like think about a lot of things and like bring that into fruition. And like earth signs, like grounding a lot of things and bringing a lot of things back down to earth, So it's all equally valuable. I think that I just like, I can't even say like I have a favorite sign because I like love every sign for a different reason. And I don't like every sign for different reasons. So it's I'm not biased in that way. I used to be, but I've definitely sat with those parts. And the funniest thing about it is like the signs in which I was most resistant to or had like difficulties with were either people and like persons, places, things that I needed to like kind of accept within myself. And then I end up going to my chart or hitting up one of my friends that are much more versed in astrology than I am. And they're like, oh, well, that makes sense because that's literally opposite this, or this is, you have a bunch of that in your chart. Or maybe you're kind of resistant to that part of yourself. And I'm like, okay, interesting, food for thought. So yeah, well, I hope I answered your question. And if anybody else has any other questions, feel free to like put them in the chat. At this point, I'm going to open up this book that I also haven't seen in a long time. If y'all have been with me watching these for a minute, you'll know that I used to bring this one on. This is a really cool one. It's called Mind Platter. I had gotten it in, I think it's the biggest library in the United States or something, if I'm not mistaken. It's in Portland, Oregon. But, okay. So, what is the message that we are meant to hear after having this beautiful session today. That path. The breaks you create on the inside can break you down more than those on the outside. Any stranger on the street will help you get back up when you fall and hurt yourself, but rarely will you find someone who will see the agony in your eyes and work to replace it with a smile. You claim to be one to see the sadness in others' eyes, while it is you that creates the sadness in their eyes, to give yourself the excuse to make them happy, because you want to make them happy, because you tie your happiness to theirs. And those who actually care about you, you ignore, gracefully, telling yourself that they don't need you, because you don't need them, because you couldn't tie your happiness to theirs. Yo. This one, I don't think I've ever read this one. I like what I do with this book is I just open it up I think I read the whole thing through the first time I got it, but that was like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. But shit, that just shined the light on like such a big topic. I'm gonna read that one more time. I'm just gonna read that one more time. That path. The breaks you create on the inside can break you down more than those on the outside. Any stranger on the street will help you get back up when you fall and hurt yourself, but rarely will you find someone who will see the agony in your eyes and work to replace it with a smile. You claim to be the one to see the sadness in others' eyes, while it is you that creates the sadness in their eyes, to give yourself the excuse to make them happy. Because you want to make them happy, because you tie your happiness to theirs. And those who actually care about you, you ignore gracefully, telling yourself that they don't need you, because you don't need them, because you couldn't tie your happiness to theirs. Well, a part of me wants to unpack that. I think that will hit whoever that's supposed to hit, and it'll bounce off of whoever it's supposed to bounce off of. But that was a really interesting, that was a really interesting poem, because I feel like it gives like perspective on, sometimes there's folks, and sometimes we might be those folks, and sometimes we might know those folks, right? Where they're always doing things for other people, but they're not doing it for themselves. And they're constantly exhausted or like feeling drained and things of that sort. And not realizing, where the source of the happiness is like, because when it's gone, like after you help the person, you get those endorphins, like, or you get that happiness or that worthiness, and then it's gone. And when you're left alone, there's nothing else, right? Because you're not creating it or generating it from yourself. So I want to end off on the note of asking yourself a question. Now I'm going to ask you guys a question. Where do you source your happiness from? Where is it that you source your happiness from? Where do you feel the most happy? And why? Without judging yourself. Just understanding, Because even say you don't source your happiness from yourself right now doesn't mean that you can in the future, and it's nothing to feel ashamed of. I definitely didn't source my happiness from myself for a very, very long time until I understood that that's what I was doing. And then I was like, oh, wow. And then I kind of unpacked a lot of codependency, right, and what that means. And then I still have to check myself. I'm a recovering codependent person. I still got to check myself and tune in, make sure that I'm not doing that stuff. So, or why I'm doing that stuff and how I can kind of navigate it in a better way. So, yeah. So, now I brought Third Eye Bowl with me today. She was kind of asking to be up here. So, thank you all for tuning in, for asking the questions. I just want to remind you guys that asking these questions doesn't mean that you don't know the answers. Yeah, I'm just kind of reminding you of what you already know, right? You're asking a question because a part of you already knows the answer and it's looking for an affirmation. And I'm hoping that, these answers helped either spark that, or maybe it sparked that inversion. You know, sometimes you ask somebody like, should I wear this or this? And then like, and you think you don't know what you want to wear, and then they tell you should wear that, and you're like, nah, I want to wear this. It's kind of the same thing. So I appreciate you guys, bouncing off your questions. I hope the reflections of yourself came back. And yeah, I want to play this bowl today for all of us to tune into our intuition in a good way, and just allow these vibrations to kind of clear our minds and really listen to ourselves, really strengthen that tie with ourself and our communication with our intuition. So if it feels good for you to get comfortable, maybe close your eyes, place your hands wherever they feel comfortable. Allow yourself to receive the vibrations. May these vibrations break up anything that hinders us from believing in our gut feelings and ourselves, any doubts, and replace that with confidence and discernment in a good way. An affirmation that came up for me that, maybe it resonates with you guys too, is I know that I don't know that I know. That might be confusing for some, but that might hit for others. So yeah, thank you guys for interacting with me. I look forward to interacting with y'all every Wednesday. Thank you for being on this journey for me. It might be a little shorter next time, might be a little longer. I don't know. We're going to kind of ride this journey with each other and see how it looks and feels every time. So feel free to ask any more questions, send them to me directly or go to the link in the bio and you can put them in anonymously as well. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day and I'll see you next Wednesday.